I first learned that I was a Nazi many years ago. I don't remember what the opinion was exactly, but I expressed some kind of opinion about something, and I was promptly informed that only Nazis think that way or say those sorts of things. Of course, the confusing part was that my opinion had nothing at all to do with Nazism or anything associated with Nazism. Nonetheless, I was a Nazi, and like so many others, I have relearned this lesson every day since. These days, I'm called a Nazi dozens of times every hour of every day. I'm a Nazi for criticizing Joe Biden. I'm a Nazi for opposing critical race theory. I'm a Nazi for believing that men can't have babies. I'm a Nazi for not wanting preschool teachers to talk to 4-year-olds about their sexuality. I'm a Nazi for saying that fat people should consider dieting. I'm a Nazi for preferring vanilla ice cream over chocolate, etc., and so forth, on and on forever. And I'm not just a Nazi. Again, as so many of you have learned about yourselves, I'm also every ist and phobe in the book. I'm a sexist, a transphobe, a homophobe, a fatphobe, a misogynist, an ableist, a fascist, a white supremacist, and so on. Every week I learn that I'm guilty of new moral crimes that I didn't even know existed before. Last week I was a misogynoir, which apparently is a racist misogyny against black women is misogynoir. And I'm guilty of that too, it turns out. My supervillain resume continues to grow. I am indeed the worst Nazi, white supremacist, fatphobe, ableist, anti-gay, fascist, transphobic, misogynoirist, misogynist, homophobe the world has ever seen. Along with all the other Nazi, white supremacist, fatphobe, ableist, anti-gay, fascist, transphobic, misogynoirist, misogynist, homophobes. There are a lot of us out there. Half the country, if not more. At least that's what we have been told. That's how we've been labeled. We've been labeled this way relentlessly, nonstop, in response to literally every view we hold, everything we say, every argument we make, and every opinion we express. So, you must forgive me if I am not very sympathetic to the leftists who are now complaining about being labeled groomers. These are the very people who have hung every smear, slur, and label under the sun around my neck and yours for decades. They've literally accused us of being secret agents of the Third Reich, and now they insist that we should be more careful with the labels that we use. Your accusations are unfair and hurtful, you damn Nazi Klansmen, they say as they wipe tears away. So you'll excuse me if I struggle to take their emotions seriously. And yet this is the response they're going with. Over the last several days, in response especially to conservative criticism of Ketanji Jackson's lenience towards pedophiles and our push for parental rights in Florida and elsewhere, the media have declared that grooming accusations are unfair, despicable, shameful, the kinds of things that only Nazis say. The Washington Post has an article headlined, "The New Red Scare, the Right Leans into Pedophilia Accusations." And then Vice declares, conservatives are smearing don't say gay opponents as pedophile groomers. The Week wonders, why are Republicans so concerned about grooming? Because it's bad. I think probably I could just answer it that way. New York Magazine has a long piece explaining, quote, why Republicans are smearing everyone as pedophiles now. Josh Marshall at Talking Points memo goes farther. He says that the groomer accusation is, quote, pre-genocide talk. So now we're genocidal. But we're the ones, again, who should be careful with the labels, right? And there's, of course, round agreement that the grooming claims are really thinly veiled homophobia. As the Daily Beast explains in their article, Republicans say groomer to put a nice face on homophobia. That article, by the way, written by Daniel Summers, says in part, I'll read a little bit of this to you. It says, by reaching for the language of sexual predation to be wielded against LGBTQ plus people and our supporters in decrying this law, people calling us groomers make plain that the hatred never really left. The same hideous lies that inform the taunts of my childhood bullies are near at hand for use today. Of course, what we really want is nothing like the vicious falsehood imputed to us. I don't want my own young children learning about sex, straight or gay or otherwise, before it's developmentally appropriate any more than any other parent does. What I do want is for them to be able to talk about their two dads in the same easy way their peers with heterosexual parents talk about their families, and for their teachers to be able to participate in guiding those discussions if necessary. I want families like ours to show up in the books available in the classrooms so both my kids and the other students can see that we exist alongside them. I want kids who don't conform to other people's gender expectations to be safe and supported in their classrooms just the way they are. Once again, they are the ones who assume that any accusation of grooming must be a reference to LGBT people. We never said that. Perhaps this writer has some guilt on his own conscience that makes him leap to that conclusion. I have no idea. What I do know is that all the Florida bill does, and all that any of us are calling for as it relates to this topic, is a prohibition of sexually inappropriate classroom instruction. That's it. We are not saying that gay people are the only ones who give this kind of inappropriate instruction. We don't care who's giving it. The who is not important. It's the what. And as for that what, the writer claims that he agrees that children shouldn't learn about sex before it's developmentally appropriate, but then in the next sentence, he says that he wants teachers to guide discussions about his children's two dads. Now, there's nothing in the bill preventing his children from talking about their home life, but why do you need the teachers to guide that discussion? And what does that mean? I don't recall any of my teachers in any grade, in any classroom, guiding discussions about our personal lives. The phrasing here is quite bizarre, and it leads inevitably to the conclusion that, in fact, he does want teachers giving sexually inappropriate instruction to young children, even as he claims otherwise. But according to the left, the groomer label is not only a vicious, hurtful smear, it's also, of course, a conspiracy theory. Chris Hayes on MSNBC laid this out last night. Listen to this.
These Republican politicians and their allies in conservative media cannot just come out and say, there is an evil cabal of liberals running a child sex trafficking ring around the world dominated by George Soros, the Rothschilds, and the Clintons, and they also worship Satan. They realize they sound nuts. So instead, they find these not so clever ways to play footsie with the people that do believe that make up at least a quarter of the base of their party. Like accusing Judge Jackson of being sympathetic to child abusers, wink, wink. Or adopting the slogan, save the children, which of course sounds perfectly noble, innocent enough on its face, but as Associated Press reports, has actually become a dog whistle to QAnon supporters. Or, more recently, through vague allegations of grooming, an age-old smear to imply that members of LGBTQ community are trying to prime children for sexual abuse. That appears to be the case in Florida, and the basis behind the state's so-called Don't Say Gay bill, which prohibits the discussion in class of sexual orientation or gender identity in classrooms for young children.
Just to clarify one thing, first of all, we are not saying that liberals and Democrats worship Satan. They are Satanists, yes, but they worship themselves, and Satanism is the worship of the self. So, but yeah, I mean, absolutely satanic. They are. And so are you, Chris Hayes. That's all a dog whistle to QAnon, he says. Never mind that at this point, QAnon is comprised of about 4 people posting memes back and forth on a message board somewhere. The irony is that Hayes demonstrates the leftist propensity for smearing and labeling their opponents even while decrying the alleged smearing and labeling of his own side. He says that anybody who wants to save the children or who opposes inappropriate sexual discussion in kindergarten is a proponent of the QAnon conspiracy theory. And they're also Nazis, of course. Meanwhile, even some alleged conservatives have locked arms with leftists like Chris Hayes in an attempt to shield them from the groomer tag. David French, of course, usual suspect, posted an article titled "Against the Groomer Smear." Now, I didn't read it because it's behind a paywall that I'm definitely not paying for, but we can assume that French's argument boils down to this tweet that he sent out earlier the same day. He says, "Redefining grooming and slinging false accusations of sympathy for pedophilia is pure malice. Blue checks doing it on this website know better, but lots of ordinary folks don't. They hear the words and apply their ordinary meaning. That's incredibly dangerous. This is malice. It's dangerous. Inappropriate." That's David French's whole career at this point, is wagging his finger and saying, inappropriate. Now, you have to love this from David French. I mean, it's the perfect mix of wimpish kowtowing, hypocritical dishonesty, and pompous paternalism. Ordinary folks are too stupid to understand what is meant by groomer, he says. And he's standing up for those ordinary folks who are just morons. And his sentiments are echoed by others at alleged conservative publications like The Dispatch and Bulwark. You can't be surprised to see these folks taking this position. I mean, they represent a brand of conservatism that has achieved nothing of significance. I mean, it has presided over the left's total domination of the culture. It has watched haplessly and helplessly as left-wing radicals took over every major cultural institution, to include and especially the educational institutions. It has, at best, slowed our civilizational descent into the abyss, but probably not even managed that much. And now that it sees a brand of conservatism that is actually landing some blows here, winning back some of the ground that was lost, ever so slowly, ever so, inch by inch. Now that it sees this brand of conservative achieving what it could never achieve, the proponents of this ineffectual, effeminate brand of conservatism, perhaps out of envy or simply weakness or some combination, they run to the left, becoming outright defenders of what they had previously spent decades pretending to oppose. They hate the groomer label, especially because it works. And these faux conservatives hate nothing so much as what actually works. And that's what we have to understand about groomer, the label. First of all, even if the label was unfair, the people complaining about its unfairness have no room to complain. Their tears mean nothing. They have smeared and lied and slandered and defamed with abandon for years on end. They're now getting a dose of their own medicine. And if that's the case, and they don't like it, they have only themselves to blame. But as it happens, the label is not unfair. It is simply an undeniable fact that leftist radicals in education and in media and in Hollywood and in government are now and have been for years indoctrinating and grooming kids into a certain sexual view and lifestyle. That is precisely how LGBT and trans identifications have increased exponentially in just a short period of time. That is why there's now an epidemic of kids confused about their genders. It's why the identity crisis has gotten so bad that they're putting litter boxes in public school bathrooms for kids who identify as felines. This is all the result of grooming. It's what they're doing. It's what they've done. And they hate it when we point it out, which is why we must continue to do so. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down there so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.